Oh, good morning. Happy Saturday, folks, family, friends, loved ones, enemies, frenemies, wizards, witches, muggles, mudbloods, people of Middle Earth, to another episode of Disguise Coverage, the only podcast in existence that gives you an equal amount of blueberries in each muffin, a special Saturday morning edition of Disguise Coverage, joined by my partner in crime lately and as of recent, Mr. Kendall Mirsky. Kendall, how come we're doing a Saturday morning episode of Disguise Coverage? Why? Like, why? If someone tuned in right now and they've been like living under a rock or with their head in the sand, they'd be like, Saturday morning, what's going on? How come they're doing this? How come we are? Tell them.
Well,
Tell them
I
why.
mean, the draft changed things, our regularly scheduled programming.
There you go.
It's different. It's not what everyone's used to. Disguised coverage is all over the place now, but we got to give you guys the coverage that Cover One provides. We're covering everything on the draft. We're on boots on the ground. We're here domestically. We're doing everything we need to do to cover the draft. And this is part of it, man. Day 2 is over. We could have done another recorded version, but we wanted to go live for you guys and be able to interact with you guys in the chat. Well, I woke up early. I guess you woke up early too, but for different reasons, to do some more homework on some of the draft picks. I woke up early because I'm mountain time. So yeah, no, it's we're back here. We're grinding, man. We're grinding for the draft, and we're gonna give you guys the all the details on the last 2 draft picks for the Buffalo Bills, the day 2 draft picks.
Yeah, I like how you mentioned us going live this morning. We did the recorded episode late Thursday night, launched it Friday. I was in the chat yesterday morning, kind of answering stuff for people and engaging. And there was just, I mean, we'll see what happens this morning, but there was just so much engagement yesterday morning. I was like, well, we might as well do it fully live. That way we can address things live and in person and not have to type it and answer it verbally. And yeah, a lot of action yesterday on day 2 in general, but the Bills trading back multiple times, and then with the players they picked, there's some interesting feelings amongst Bills fans. We'd already planned on doing this episode in general, but after last night, there was an initial kind of like, oh, sweet, like James Cook. And then there was also some like, oh, I don't think he's complete enough to take over for Devin Singletary. I'm disappointed. Both of those things amongst the fan base. And then you have the Terrel Bernard pick, and you have one side that's like, oh, trust the process, and he's got some traits and things, and I'm okay with it. And then the other side that is just, this is a waste of a pick, and I'm terrible. Yeah, like even Joe come in and say, make me feel better, guys. Like,
it's our job right now.
That is what our job is. There's or other people like Jim coming in saying like Bernard gives flexibility, Bean has options. There's so many different ways to look at it, and we're going to talk about some of those and also dive into these prospects. This is the main thing. You guys know at this point, Kendall and I, along with Eric Turner, we are the film grinders of Cover One in everything, from the pro level to the college level. And so this offseason so far, in this pre-draft process and into the draft process, has been so much about prospect evaluation and trade identification and skill set mapping and scheme fits and projection to the NFL and what is translatable, what is sustainable, what are areas of opportunity, what are strengths. And we've been grinding it so much. And then we combine that with the analytics and the advanced metrics and just talking ball in general to bring you guys anything and everything that you need to know. And that's what we're going to do this morning, an in-depth breakdown on the Buffalo Bills night 2 picks, Mr. James Cook and Mr. Terrel Bernard. And with that being said, we're going to jump right into this episode. But first, just kidding, kind of. Want to plug the sponsor. You guys know One Pie Pizza, best pizza in Buffalo, delicious sweet sauce pie, cup and char pepperoni, great cheese to sauce ratio, homemade blue cheese, tremendous people. Like I always say, they do initiatives for the community left and right every other month. They are a tremendous group of people making a tremendous product, and it's delicious. I got it multiple times this week because of the draft. I consider it a holiday, so I treated myself and the wife, and it has been tremendous. The online menu can be found in the episode show notes here on YouTube or any one of the podcasting apps and platforms. Go get yourself some One Pie, the best pizza in Buffalo, hands down. James Cook, second-round pick for the Buffalo Bills. Kendall, overall thoughts on Mr. Cook joining the Buffalo Bills?
I'm excited. I think the fit makes a lot of sense. We get that home run threat, and I think this is everything the Bills and Bills fans wanted with Matt Breida last year, but perhaps some more. There's obviously the upside because he's a rookie. He's still got room to grow into everything that he is. Yeah, James White, J.D. McKissick, all of these things. Like literally, Bean in his presser said he's kind of like a wide receiver in his own way. And to me, that honestly, anyone who was upset we didn't take a wide receiver in the 3rd round, I really wonder how much that played into things,
Mhm.
being saying he's kind of like a wide receiver in his own way. So I love the fit, and that's the main thing, man. Like the way the Bills run their offense, and obviously how much they are passing the football is
Mm.
super important to how Cook is going to be utilized. And I see a lot of people in the chat saying, he's going to be utilized like Kamara in New
Mm.
Orleans, and I think that's fair. But I think Cook also adds the dimension of literally being split out in the slot and out wide and
Mhm.
running like legitimate routes. And not saying Kamara can't do that, and he has done that, but I don't think he sniffs the frequency that the Bills are planning on doing that kind of stuff with James Cook. So I think not only is he going to give you some extra stuff as a 3rd down running back, against light boxes on perhaps like a 3rd and 4 or 3rd and 5 where defenses are kind of
Mhm.
indecisive on how they want to defend that run pass. And if they do show too high looks with a light box, Cook is a guy with breakaway ability. Like, he's got 4.4 speed. He showed it on tape. Honestly, I think he plays faster than his time at the combine, and he breaks runs, man. Like he can break
Mhm.
those runs and really make a defense pay for giving him too much space. So I'm really, really excited about this pick, but we can get into the nitty-gritty a little bit more before you give your
Yes.
or after you give your thoughts.
This is I want to pull this comment first from Craig. He says, I love it. I trust McBean. And then Kyle, referencing Kyle Brandt. Kyle told me the Bills are winning the Super Bowl. He said mount up, so you know it's true. Spot on. I love that. I appreciate you, Craig. Craig is an awesome Twitter engager as well. So big ups for Craig on that one. Yeah, it's you mentioned some of the usage. I think that's the most exciting thing for me overall at this point. James Cook in his career, 19.5% of his pass snaps have come in the slot. 6.7% have come with him lined up out wide. We've got highlights that we're going to break down in the film room Tuesday when we break down the game tape, and you'll see he's running sluggos from
Mhm.
the outside, and just running it well. Not like running it well for a running back. He's running it well. And we saw the Bills go after J.D. McKissick and that not land. And then adding it in with what Brandon Beane said last night in his presser and talking about how they view Cook as a guy with those wide receiver traits and those wide receiver abilities and what he can add.
Right.
And it became clear that that was a priority for this team. And that was something we talked about this offseason when addressing the running back room. We wanted someone that added a new dynamic. And, I think I'm speaking for you in a bit in this way as well, but speaking for myself, I just wanted some plus matchup. Give me a running
Mhm.
back with home run speed and burst. Give me a running back that's power and big, like a Brian
Mhm.
Robinson or some ideal A.J. Dillon comp or something that doesn't
Mhm.
exist in this draft, but something in that nature. Or give me a pass option. The last 2 off seasons, I've wanted James White. So I think it's funny that there's some people
Yeah. Saying that,
mentioning
yeah.
that. And Cook is a bit of a combination of the first one and the third one. He's a
Yeah.
legitimate receiving threat in a variety of ways, coming out of the backfield, lining up, and being that threat legitimately in terms of alignment. And then he's also got home run speed and threat
Yeah.
ability, and he's got short area burst. And I think that's a piece that I'm most excited for. He is a guy, we talked about it. The Bills are going to get light boxes. Oh, I see you smiling. I also saw Super Chat come up. I feel like I need to pull it. This is very good from Joe.
Yeah.
To be used to got to get Kendall some caffeinated chocolate milk. That is well said.
All
We
I
need to
have
give
is
it to him.
iced tea. That's all I have
He's
right
kind of
now. It's
caffeinated.
it's all I have.
That's very funny. We want someone who can take advantage of light boxes. And Cook has the burst and the decisiveness to take advantage of those light boxes. There's a bunch of runs where he sees the hole and he's through and he's gone
Yeah.
because he's good. He's not just like, oh, he's quicker than he is fast, or he's got short burst, or he's got long speed. He's got both. He's got
Yes.
home run potential and he's got short area burst. So overall, whether as a runner, as a receiver, there's positive things. There are some areas of opportunity, but I think it's a good pick. And again, especially the wrinkle it adds to the Bills offense. Now, if you were drafting him as another team to be your every down back and be the bell cow, I don't think that's the exact right fit for him. And that's not where the value comes in.
Mhm.
But in a scheme and system like the Bills, I think it's I don't want to say match made in heaven, but I think it's a really nice fit. And, when talking about Cook and breaking him down from an in-depth perspective, What are some things that you like from him in terms of strengths? What were the things that you saw flash on tape that you were like, again, like we talked about last night with Elam or 2 nights ago? What are the traits and the skill set pieces that you hang your hat on from a detail perspective that you think he does really well and that he brings to the NFL?
Yeah, I'll go through my pros for him that I saw on tape. But first, I want to kind of tail off of what you just said at the tail end there for James Cook and bring in what Brandon Beane said in his presser. And he talked about how, I mean, he doesn't really see him as just a third down back. Now, he said, quote, best skill set is as a sub back, but
Yes.
he can handle first and second downs. You know, it might not be what they imagine him doing right away, but it's something he can do. But he right away will provide that floor as a sub back, as a third down back. And furthermore, Brandon Beane specifically said he sees pass pro as his biggest hurdle. So that kind of does play hand in hand to the idea that right away, hey man, he can provide on third downs. You know, maybe he'll be a bit of a tendency giveaway on those third down passing downs. If he's in the game, it may tip a pass. If he's not in the game, it may tip that, you know, it's a max protect pass. Who knows? But we'll see what happens when we get there. Either way, pros for him that I said great play speed. That's number one for him in my scouting notes. I think he's a decisive zone runner, one cut north south. He's not we mentioned this offline yesterday. I said he's kind of no nonsense in that way where he sees grass and he'll just go for it. You know, he sees that grass, one cut, gets downhill, uses his speed. It's not in the same no nonsense manner as like a Dameon Pierce, who's literally like a hammer running through that open field. But it's no nonsense in the sense where when he sees that green grass, he goes for it. He just goes. I think he's got great footwork in the backfield. I think that's one of the best things about him, in my opinion. I think his footwork is super efficient, and that's what I keep coming back to. I think the tying it together with his vision is probably something that can get a little bit better. But I think the fact that he has the footwork, now he's just got to pair it with what he sees and try to manipulate that second level and make it easier on himself. I think he's got sufficient contact balance, especially for his size, but it's still something that could be used to work on area of opportunity. And then great receiving ability, and not only greatest receiving ability, great gadget ability. You know, he can be used in the Isaiah McKenzie way too, on jet sweeps, orbit motions, all that kind of stuff. It's not just obviously the out of the backfield stuff. It's not just being split out wide, running like intricate wide receiver routes, all that kind of stuff. It's also like the rudimentary gadget stuff that is manufactured ways to just get him easy touches, get him in open space, and get that playmaker the football. Because as Brandon Beane said in his presser, you know, we think about rack when we talk about wide receivers. We don't think about rack when we talk about running backs, and we should, because you dump the ball down to a running back like that and he transitions back into a running back real quickly. You know, he makes one man miss and he's got the speed to take it to the house. So that's the best thing about James Cook. I mean, it is that speed, but it's all of it coupled together with the unique skill set that it offers to the Buffalo Bills in the passing game as well as the running game.
You hit a lot of the good points there. His ability in space was a big one for me. Like, he's just a guy you just want to get the ball to in space, and usually it's winding up in a positive for you. And sometimes it's a little chunk positive. It's like, oh, an extra 3 yards here, or an extra 5 yards here. And then other times it's big chunks and it's an extra 15 here. It's an extra 10 here. For his career, he averages 10.5 yards after catch per reception. And a couple of seasons where it was in like the 14s and the 12s. Like, he is a run after catch type of guy who makes plays. Yeah, the easy things that we've talked about with the benefit of a receiving back for Josh Allen, where it's just like, okay, let me dump it down. The old Jimmy Garoppolo thing where it's like, wow, Jimmy Garoppolo had 250 passing yards in the first half. And it's like, yeah,
Phillip
but like
Rivers.
Boom. But yeah, like 175 of it was like run after catch from him dumping it down. Granted, that's a good decision, but take advantage of the athletes and the weapons that you have. Everything you said, you know, you hit on the detail points, and I have a lot of them as well. I don't want to like completely rehash it, but I think for me, I want to tie him into like that scheme fit piece, which we talked about last night on the draft on the live show. This is an element the Bills haven't had before in their backfield. They haven't had someone that was with Josh Allen, I should say. They haven't had someone that's a bona fide threat that you have to honor in both ways. You have to honor him as a running back, and you have to honor him as a receiver. And that, again, positionless football, as we keep talking
Mhm.
about, that potential is huge. And you mentioned, I think someone tweeted it out last night, and then you mentioned it a little on the show. I love this idea now of going, you say you come out in a basic 12 personnel look and one receiver on each side. So say it's like Diggs and OJ Howard attached to the line on this side, and then Knox attached to the line on this side, and then Gabriel Davis outside, James Cook in the backfield. You come up lined up like that. And Allen comes to the line, motion out, and all of a sudden you're in like a five spread formation.
Right.
With all
Everyone.
5 guys
Even
who
Cook.
who can run routes and be receiving threats. Or you know what you do? Oh, I got goosebumps because I was thinking about this last night. I was like diagramming things. Say you do that, right? Start to work like a no huddle or a fast offense up tempo with it, and you keep that grouping on the field. But then you check back into a run. And you can legitimately run a run because you've got a running back who can function like that, and you've got a 2 tight end set with a good blocking receiver like Gabe Davis. There's all this chess potential from an alignment and personnel and schematic, genesis that I'm so excited about because, again, the Bills offense picked up steam towards the end of the year once they started to really develop a running game. But for the beginning of the year, the Bills got dictated to by defenses. They were the victim of 2 high coverages really coming and taking root, and a lot of zone defense. The Bills now, with the addition of OJ Howard and a back like James Cook, the Bills now have the opportunity to take that control back from defenses, and they can now start to dictate, which is a huge piece. And again, like we talked about last night, everybody talks about getting a weapon for Josh Allen, and a lot of it I think is conflated with receiver and tight end. James Cook is a weapon because of his skill set. And I mean, ironically, it's because he can function a little bit as a wide receiver. And that's legit. He's got some route running prowess. He's got alignment versatility. And obviously he can function coming out of the backfield. He's a really nice chess piece to make things easier for Josh Allen and make defenses have to honor another piece on the field and have to think about it. And whether they're thinking about it in real time and it gives them pause, or they're thinking about it during the week and they have to put extra work in the film room to prepare for it and account for it. It's a really nice chess piece. And I love his home run speed. He's a 4.4 40 guy, short area burst. I like how you said the get north and south, very similar to his brother Dalvin, where he'll press and then he sees it and boom, he's through. I would like him at times. He's got some of that. You think he's going to break it, and then he just gets an arm tackle around his legs and he gets brought down like a little after the line, and you're like, oh, like I wish he could have broke that. But he's got, I would say, sufficient contact balance, like you said. Sometimes he pulls off some real good ones, like he'll get to the second level and he'll have a safety come down and barrel into him, and he just shakes it off or runs through an arm tackle and keeps going. I don't think it's a detriment. I just wouldn't consider it a strength. I think sufficient is a good way to put it. But a lot of his value is going to come in the receiving capability, the dual threat purpose, the short area burst and quickness, and the long speed home run threat combined with his hands and his ability to understand leverage and spacing and running an angle route or an option route and understanding what coverage it is and if I should break out or in and when and how to leverage the linebacker. He operates on a high level like that. But, there are areas of opportunity for his game. What are some things that you noticed when breaking down James Cook? What are some things that you would consider areas of opportunity or areas that you think he needs to improve on when it comes to how productive he can be in the NFL?
So when I watched this tape, the main thing I took away was that he's a zone runner in shotgun sets a lot. Like when he was in the game, Georgia was in shotgun and they were running zone. And his split for his career is 70% zone runs and 30% gap runs. This past year, it was a little bit more even with 59% zone runs and 31% gap runs. But either way, that's even not right. It's that's 41% gap runs. I couldn't do math so late at night last night.
I also know from the total, like he 142 zone carries, like 62 gap. Like, that's roughly the breakdown.
Yeah. So anyways, the big thing with him weakness wise, I think I already alluded to it a little bit, is he's rarely used as a pass blocker. And when he is, he shows like a general willingness and acumen to do it, but he still is going to need to add some bulk on, like, is he going to be able to take on blitzing linebackers or, help chip against defensive ends at 199 pounds? He's generally going to need to add some more power to his game. I literally said next note is mediocre power, and that was more applied to the run game than it was pass protection. But of course, it's all relatively, it all loops in together.
Correct. It all ties in. Correct.
Exactly. So I think the main thing though is he's rarely used as a traditional tailback. He's used from that shotgun formation a lot. And I think
There's
um
one where versus Tennessee in the red zone, they line up in like an I, and he gets a toss for a touchdown, and I was like, "What the hell is this I formation?"
right.
With Cook, what? Yeah,
Yeah, it's like they put in who's the other guy? White, Zamir White. Like they
yeah,
put him for all those like traditional tailback type of things. So I mean, it works for the Bills. The Bills are rarely in that traditional tailback type of
no,
stuff, and
get it
he'll be great on third
again.
downs when he has to
Scheme
do
fit, scheme
shotgun
fit,
zone runs.
scheme fit.
Exactly. But moving forward, and I think that's why he's such a good fit. I see people in the chat saying like, "Oh, is he a traditional back? Like, can he do that? Like in between the tackle stuff?" Yeah, he
Yes,
can, but he doesn't have to right away. And I think that's what the special thing is about this. Like I know people are down on Zach Moss, but obviously Devin Singletary and Zach Moss can take care of all the first and second down stuff from traditional looks. If you're going I formation, if you're going single back, if you're going offset I, whatever the traditional backfield looks you're trying to go for are,
mhm,
you can hand that off to Singletary and Moss. And then once you get in shotgun and those third down spread looks, Cook is perfectly fit to do that. But what I will say is, like I said, he seems to be a bit more comfortable on those zone runs, identifying cutback lanes in that way, finding the green grass, getting downhill, getting north and south in
yes,
that way. But when it's gap, he lacks some patience to let those blocks develop. I think he's too fast for gap and he's not patient enough to let those blocks develop yet. And that's why I think it'll
mm,
be very valuable for him, especially, he trains with Motor in the offseason, but now
mm,
training with Motor on the field inside the Buffalo Bills system. I think it'll be very valuable in that way because we know how great Motor is in the gap system, allowing those blocks to
yeah,
develop. Obviously, being a slower back than Cook kind of helps in that way to be patient naturally if you're just slower than Cook is. But there's still a mental component to it where you don't have to
mhm,
hit the hole as fast as you possibly can. You got to wait for your blocks to develop and then hit the hole because he's
yeah,
got the speed. It's funny. We've talked about his 4.4 speed. I honestly think he's quicker than fast, but
agreed.
that's not to slight his long
No,
speed. Like he's
correct.
still really freaking fast, but he's honestly quicker than he is fast, which is crazy.
Yeah, he's got that. I mean, I think you even see it with. It's funny because Dalvin Cook is known as this burner. He didn't test well in
No,
the
he didn't.
40. I think it's like a 4.5, and he's
Mhm.
like kind of quicker than he is fast, but he's got that long speed. I think Cook, he's got enough long speed, but I agree. Like I like his short area burst, and again taking advantage of light boxes. Like I like that he's got. I know I'm about to talk about areas of opportunity, but in
Mhm.
touching on one more of his strengths, like the Bills are going to see light boxes all the time because of Josh Allen in this passing attack. He's got that short area burst and decisiveness to immediately attack those light boxes and
Mhm.
get you the 4 yards that you should get right away and then some. I
Yeah.
like what you mentioned about he maybe hitting the hole a little too fast. It's funny because he's got really good elusiveness in the hole.
Mhm.
Like he'll make literally linemen and linebackers miss and then get north and south and attack again. But a
Mhm.
lot of times he's making those guys miss in the hole because he's hitting the hole too early and not letting the play develop. I tie that in a little bit with his vision piece. I don't think it's bad, but I think, yeah, setting things up, whether it's because he's playing too fast or because he doesn't have the vision to set it up in advance. I don't know. I don't know if it's a processing thing or just he's
Mhm.
trying to get up and go. But I do that is an area of opportunity, I think, for him. Whether it's patience or seeing it and letting it develop, he's very good at reading what's going on in front of him at the first level and attacking and going. But that second level setup, how to set up that second level and make things easier for him, I
Mhm.
think is a step I'd like to see him take, which is coachable and learnable. And he's got I mean, with that ability and that burst, right? It's not even like he has to set it up so perfectly because he just needs to set it up decently because he has that speed where he can take advantage of it right away. I think that's a huge one. I like that you mentioned the blocking piece as well. That's one for me. He's willing. He gives
Mhm.
the effort. And there's at times where he shows like proper technique and form and fundamentals. He can recognize things, but I think he's somebody that really has to be taught the essence of like reading what's going on in front of him and how
Mhm.
to properly translate. And then because of his size, his form has to be on point at all times. So I
Yeah.
think coaching up his technique, coaching up his fundamentals is something that needs to be done in the um the run block aspect. And actually, Kendall, I'm gonna stop now. I see the note, but I'm gonna stop it. Over 200 viewers on a Saturday morning when people are probably early or doing other stuff. We're tremendously thankful and appreciative of all you guys here. I've been getting into it. I haven't even been like watching up top. This is tremendous. Like, we appreciate the hell out of you guys so much. So thank you very much to everybody tuning in live right now. This is honestly super tremendous. Thank you guys so much. I'm kind of at a loss for words. That's awesome. Thank you guys. But that blocking piece, like I mentioned last night, the first part of the battle is the willingness. Like, are you willing in the blocking aspect? And if you are, you can add the technique. You can add, oh, that's awesome. Brett says, nah, man, I was up early to watch this. Appreciate you, man. The willingness is going to be a huge component. And then because of his size, again, he's going to have to be on point with his fundamentals. But again, that's all things that are coachable. How to read what's going on in front of you properly and consistently be in the right position and execute. I think he's sufficient right now. I don't think it's a liability. I just don't think it's a plus matchup. I think you'll get some right now if he just goes in and as a pass protector, and as he is now at Georgia, you're going to see some snaps where you're like, oh, and then some others where you're like, oh, and it's just that inconsistency. But again, to Davis's point, almost all rookie running backs need improvement pass blocking. That's a huge thing rookie running backs need to work on. And honestly, it's a thing that not a lot of running backs do in college a ton. Like, there's very few who do it regularly. Those who do happen to be really good at it. And then it's like, okay, correlation, causation. Are they doing it a lot because they're great at it, or is it the other way around? But I would like to see improvement in that area. And again, like you called it, I think it's very interesting that Bean noted it right off the bat, talking about that he'd like to see Cook improve in that area. He said his exact words were, I'd like him to learn a little more about the pro game protection wise. He's very football smart, but pass protection, that'll probably be the biggest hurdle for him. But again, it's not an insurmountable hurdle. No. And I also don't want people to think that like, oh, well, that means it's an automatic clue and tendency, to the defense that if he's in there, he has to run a route because he can't pass protect. It's not that. It's just that he needs to stabilize his pass protection ability. And with how willing he is, I think that's something that can be done. I also thought it was interesting too that Bean mentioned like his best skill set as a sub back. And I wanted to tie this into one more thing. Like, I think people are seeing him more as, and a lot of people are asking in the chat, like, is he just going to be a receiving back? What does he offer as a runner? He is legitimate as a runner. And I know raw stats aren't everything, but for his career, 230 carries, 1,503 rushing yards, 14 rushing touchdowns, and 43 runs of 10 plus yards or more. And that's roughly an average yards per attempt at 6.4, 6.5. But again, what's awesome with it, so I'm going to mention some receiving stuff. I don't want it to take away from the running piece, but he is a legitimate runner. He can function in zone. He can function in gap, quick hitting gap schemes because he tends to get out in front of things a little too much. But similar to his brother, he presses the line in zone. And like you mentioned, one cut, get up and go. He's a legitimate running back piece. It's just that his greatest value comes as that receiving piece. But again, it all stems from the fact that he's viable as a runner. Like, people don't necessarily respect James White's running ability, which is why it works when the Pats do it, but he's not as strong of a runner. Cook can function and live in both worlds. It's just that one world is much stronger, but that doesn't mean that his running ability isn't great. And again, just raw numbers. So mentioning that, so the 230 carries, 1,500 rushing yards, 14 rushing touchdowns. And then on the flip side, the receiving aspect, 74 targets, 67 catches, 718 receiving yards, and 6 receiving touchdowns. You're going to see a lot from James Cook, that stat line where 6 carries for 30 yards and then like 8 catches for 90 yards and a touchdown. You're going to see that type of production for him. He's a chess piece. I think that's the best way to put it. He can be used in a multiple formations and alignments in a multiple set looks in a multitude of ways. I really like the pick from a chess piece perspective in terms of what it adds to the Bills and what it makes defenses have to account for. Anything that you want to touch on for Mr. James Cook before we move on to Mr. Terrel Bernard?
I just want to add a couple of metrics to show that he's not just a pass catcher. And I think a thing to frame it is, how I just talked about how he's quicker than fast, but he's still really fast. That kind of goes in the same vein with he's a really good wide receiver. He's probably a better receiver than runner, but he's still a good runner. That's not to slight the one that he's not as good at. It's just to say, like, this is what he's best at.
It's like people talking about how strong Josh Allen's arm is. and they don't talk about the accuracy. He's
Right.
accurate, but they don't talk about it because the arm strength is so
Is
good. So that's what gets talked
exactly.
about.
Exactly. So that I wanted to highlight that and kind of show that comparison in that way. But for his career, or actually, excuse me, for 2021, he had a 6.4 yards per carry average. That's
Oh,
tied
that's
for
right for 21.
sixth. That's tied for sixth amongst the entire nation. And that's not a raw stat. That's in terms of opportunity yards per
That's
carry.
efficiency.
Exactly. So he's tied for sixth. That's for qualifying backs in 2021, essentially like 50% of qualifying snaps. Something interesting though, he had 3.91 yards per contact or yards after contact per attempt. That was 10th. That was
Hmm.
10th in the nation, which is, I mean, when you watch the tape, that's not something that you're saying, oh, yeah, this dude eats after contact.
Mhm.
But he is elusive. If he's getting that one hand on him when he's making someone miss in that way, that goes into the yards after contact, at least yards after making a man miss. That's still all very, very valuable and being talked about how, once he makes a man miss, he's got that opportunity to make a house call. And I think that's super, super important. He had 37 first downs this year on
Oh, that's a nice
limited
stat.
attempts. Like, he did not get a full workload at Georgia. They truly had a rotation with obviously his skill set and Zamir White kind of complementing each other in a perfect manner. And he still managed to get 37 first downs for that offense. And then on top of that, the breakaway potential, 39.8
Love that.
breakaway runs this year. That was 32nd. And I think that was actually a little lower than I thought it would be for qualifying backs. But either way, I mean, 40% of your runs are breakaway runs. That's a really good clip. So
Mm.
get excited about James Cook, the runner, but get really excited about James Cook, the receiver, and the fit of how it all matches into this scheme and how we can get the most out of him, make him the best version of himself, as
Yeah.
obviously we love to say for these Buffalo Bills.
Quick question for you on Cook.
Mhm.
I have my answer in my head because I've already been reading in the comments. What do you think of James Cook and his goal line potential?
I mean, he could do it, but like it's gonna have to be schemed up in a way. Like
Mm.
if the Bills want to you almost have to make them go light box at goal line.
I was gonna say you'd have to go like 4 wide and run an RPO at
Yes.
the goal line or a quick hitting and see that's the advantage. I like him around the goal line, not in the traditional sense of because he's got this power and he can just
Right.
if you open up the tiniest crease around the goal line, he's through
He's
it and it can
quick
be a
enough to get
touchdown.
through it.
That's
Exactly.
exactly it.
It's
Like
not the
because he,
it's not the Josh Allen power on the goal line kind of thing. Yeah, exactly. You kind of have to scheme it up in that way where it works to him and his skill set, like you
yeah.
said, and spreading the defense out on the goal line, which is a thing. Like, I mean, offenses have shown to do that. Empty sets, go five spread out and just do quick curls, quick
Yep.
stops on the goal line.
Run
And
stick concept and go.
you kind of do that, but when you keep Cook in the backfield and keep four out spread out, and then there's a way where you're spreading out that defense and you're opening, like you said, just that one little crease for him to just squirt through. And I think that's the main thing with James Cook. He's got that speed to get through the hole quickly, and I think that could work on the goal line. It's not your traditional thought of goal line back, but it can work.
And I think combined, like I could see him actually having a pretty good, especially for all those fantasy football people out there.
Mhm.
I could actually see him having a pretty high touchdown upside in the red
Mhm.
zone, and especially from the 10 in,
Yeah.
because he eats up space so quickly and is
Yeah.
good in space. If the Bills get a light box, I could see him getting a crease at on a 9-yard run, and it's a house call because he gets upfield so fast and will take that space. And yeah, he's going to be functional around the goal line, but it's going to be more because of scheme design and taking advantage of it. I don't think he's the guy that you want to go heavy goal line package at the 1 and give it to him and allow him to power through. Actually, you know what? He's got some agility. Maybe he jumps over the pile like his brother
Mhm.
does from time to
Mhm.
time, or running backs do nowadays. But he definitely has usage around the goal line and in
Mhm.
the red zone. And I would actually think, to your point there, again, the chess piece, I think it makes it easier for Josh Allen to continue to function around the goal line and in the red zone and not have to take those hits. I think he gets more potential walk-in touchdowns because
Yeah.
defenses are going to have to honor. One of them are going to have more walk-in touchdowns because defenses are going to have to honor the arm and the legs of Josh Allen, and they're going to have to honor the running threat of James Cook at the same time. So it
Mhm.
becomes, or I mean, I don't know.
Pick your poison.
Exactly. Or maybe they line up in all it takes is a couple times on film at the 3 or the 4 or the 5 for you to line up in 2 by 2 with James Cook in the backfield and then motion him out. and run a
Yep.
bubble screen or a tunnel screen, or have him run an actual slant or run like a little rub route. And defenses are going to see that on film and be like, uh-oh, so we have to now
Right.
account for this and this and this. But good question in the chat. I think that was a fair comment. Yes. And oh man, I feel like people keep coming in right at the end of different things. Yes, Antonio, Cook is dangerous around the red zone. He's dangerous at all times. He is a weapon with the ball in his hands, run after catch, speed, burst, a decent enough amount of power and contact balance, finishes well, runs tough. Good pick and good. I like it a lot from a usage perspective and versatility chess piece for the Bills. And now you good on Cook? Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, no, I think we covered it. Oh, one drop in his career. I wanted to make sure that was highlighted. He was targeted 74 times. He had
74 times, 67 catches. Like, granted, a lot of those receptions and the average depth of target is around the line of scrimmage. Correct. Stuff. But yeah, it just, if it's in his area, he's coming down with it. Like, it's just very fun. All right, now let's move on to someone who it seems like from the chat, people are coming around on Terrel Bernard a little more. But I guess it was someone initially and I said it even, I was surprised at the pick, but I mentioned it last night on the live show. Like, I wasn't down or disappointed, but I was just very interested to see what his path to the field looks like and what this means for future things. Brandon Beane then spoke, which we are going to talk about as we lead into Mr. Terrel Bernard. But overall, Kendall, what are your thoughts on this pick for the Bills in terms of the value or well, guys took away. That's very funny. Well said, Mark. Yeah. Someone also mentioned earlier in the chat, they asked, would you rather have McKissick or Cook? I would rather have Cook.
Oh, Cook. Easy. Yeah, I think Judge mentioned it on our live stream yesterday. I think it would be like $2 million extra to have McKissick on the roster for less upside.
Oh, yeah, the contract
in the
value
future.
is good.
Yeah, so value player. I think I'd have Cook regardless.
One thing I want to get to too is we won't lead with it, but we'll get to it. Liam, who's an awesome supporter of ours, he's asked multiple times in the chat if Bernard could be a safety. We're going to talk about that when we get into his skill set and his traits and fit and everything. But overall thoughts on Bernard, whether it's him as the player, where he was taken, what Brandon Beane said, all of it. I think all of that combines to give us our overall thoughts before we really dive in and break him down. But as we sit here on this Saturday morning, we've had the hours to process it, got some sleep, not a ton of sleep because we're grinding here out like crazy. But what are your overall thoughts as we sit here, removed, the dust is settled on Terrel Bernard in the third round to the Buffalo Bills?
Overall, philosophically, I still need some questions answered. I'm coming around on the player after watching a game and diving into the analytics and metrics of his game. But I need to see how the rest of the draft plays out because right now my biggest issue with the pick is the opportunity cost of the positions and the players you passed up on to get a Terrel Bernard.
Which is exactly what this comment from Joel Higgs. Do you think he would have been available at the fifth? In the fifth, that's the opportunity cost piece.
That's a great point to bring up, though. I'm trying to find the quote here from Brandon Beane. He said he wouldn't have been available if he had prototypical size. He would not have been available in the third round if he had prototypical size for a linebacker with Mike and Will versatility. And I think that's very fair after watching his tape. He has a very well-rounded skill set. He's a good to great blitzer, very instinctive in that way, just shoots through the hole with a lot of energy, high energy player overall. But he shows some pattern matching abilities. He has the athleticism to do that. It's not necessarily his bread and butter, but I think his bread and butter is truly how he processes the game in the run game specifically and how he fires downhill and plays with energy. I think it's very Matt Milano-esque, and I think a lot of people see that when you see the measurables and all the comps in that way and how he even talked about Terrel Bernard did in his press conference, how he modeled his game after Matt Milano. When you see Matt Milano fire downhill, it's very similar in that way. Obviously, Matt Milano doesn't get to do that all the time in this scheme, but when he does get free reign to do that, it comes out of him. That's just who he is. That's his nature. And I think that is what Terrel Bernard is. And I wonder, in three linebacker sets, are we going to be able to get those two guys on the field and allow them to have free reign and run and chase in that way? And then have Edmonds be kind of that, I guess, back end slow processor, just waiting for
Mm.
things to come to him, funnel it to Edmonds instead of Edmonds going to run and chase. Let him slowly process the whole thing as they just go play downhill. Those
I was
two
gonna
guys.
say we keep talking about like two gapping defensive tackles to free up Edmonds. I also like the idea of another missile at the linebacker position to
Right.
just be like, yo, just go attack this spot and either make the play or free it up for someone else.
And Edmonds can just read off of Bernard and Milano, whatever they do, he can just fill and displace that way.
Mhm.
So I'm yeah, the overarching thing is just opportunity cost with Terrel Bernard.
Mhm.
I'm starting to really come around on the player himself. Seems like a process pick through and through, like smart guy, really committed to his craft, really committed to getting better. Dave Aranda had nothing of great things to
Mhm.
say about him from
Mhm.
Baylor, and we know the relationship that Sean McDermott has with Dave Aranda. And if someone speaks that highly of your work ethic, your habits, and your leadership at that level for really a historic defense at Baylor. They played a very great brand of defensive football this past year at
Especially
Baylor.
considering it's in the Big 12.
Yeah, right. Like no one plays defense in the Big 12, but they got noticed. They got noticed in the Big 12. And I
Mhm.
suppose that's, because the bar is set so
Yeah, it's
low
a little
in
bit
the
of
Big 12. But either way, like they were objectively a good defense on the national scale. Like Baylor was a good, fun defense to watch. And I think that's the thing you keep coming back to when you watch when you keep watching him on tape. He's fun. He's fun to watch on tape, and it's because of that energy that he plays with.
you mentioned that he's like a process guy or a Bills guy. And the biggest thing that I starred after watching, going back and watching multiple games and putting everything together, he's a guy who does his 1/11th.
Yeah.
He's a guy who does his job. Like whatever's asked of him, if his job is to spill and sacrifice himself on this one, he'll do it. If his job is to force, he'll do it. Like if it's to cover and this is his guy or this is his zone, he does it. He's a process guy. And Brandon Beane said so much about his, you hit on the mental piece. One that really stuck out to me was he said, quote, he's smart and instinctual, and it's hard to keep guys like that off the field.
I was just reading that.
And nice. And he's also got a couple other ones that, I think described his play really well. He said he's quick in the box. He's got short speed. His longer speed is not there, but he's quick in the box and he's got short speed. He's got a quote unquote knack for blitzing. And Brandon Beane liked his ability to match up in the pass game. And then, of course, he mentioned he's going to be undersized. He can play inside or he can play out. He's super smart and super instinctive. There's things to like. Like you can see the burst, you see the short area quickness. I definitely think the long speed disappoints me a little. Like he has times where he makes some rangy sideline to sideline plays, and then there's some others where his angle just isn't right. And I know if that like it'll be like he's on the right side of the field and they run like a screen to the left, a quick screen, and he's trying to cut it off, but he doesn't get there because he doesn't have that longer speed. But his instinct and his read was right, and the processing's there, but he's just missing out on it. But overall, yeah, like especially for what Beane said, like the depth piece, and we talked about it last night. This is a top heavy, and so I think someone else in the chat said it as well. This is a top heavy Bills linebacking unit. Knock on wood, it's a nickel defense. And I say the knock on wood because it's going to be Milano and Edmonds playing like 98% of the snaps. Unless some team like New England goes heavy in some wonky game, you're not going to see a ton of 4-3 sets. And everybody uses like the terms base, and this isn't I know Nathan just put a comment in there that said base, and that's what kind of like triggered in my brain. The Bills' base defense is a nickel defense. They are a 4-2-5. That is what their base is. 4-3 would be a sub package for them. And you look at his potential to fit. Yeah, he could function as a 4-3 linebacker. Like I like the sacrificing opportunity, the AJ Klein role. Like go be violent and angry and do your job. And if you can make a play, cool. But free some guys up, do your 1/11th, boom, good to go. He's obviously a much better athlete than AJ Klein is, and he can cover a lot better. It's a different skill set. And Brandon Beane actually noted that himself in the presser as well. But I like the idea of having depth. Like Milano and Edmonds play a very key role. The linebackers are so important in this defense, and so much is asked of them. It's part of the reason why we get labeled as Tremaine Edmonds apologists, but there's so much that is asked of him. That's why I don't think like it's such an easy thing. People are always like, oh, draft this guy and replace Edmonds. What the Bills ask of Edmonds is a lot. There's not a lot of players who can just step right into his world and fulfill that role. It's a hard thing to do. Same thing for Milano. There's a lot asked of these guys. And so I think the idea of addressing depth for them is good. It is good value. The question, like you said, it becomes that positional value. I'm sitting here right now, and you and I talked about it offline. I would have much rather had Dylan Parham. I would have much rather had an interior offensive lineman with versatility who maybe beats out Ryan Bates in 2022, but worst case scenario is one of your starting guards in 2023 and beyond. Like that. And I know people said that in the chat last night. It was like, well, either way, it's depth. But the question of it comes, what is the path to the field for Terrel Bernard? Is he still depth in year 2 and year 3 and year 4? And not that that's bad, but Dylan Parham could have been a legitimate starter in 2023 and beyond. That's where that positional value and opportunity cost comes in. And I think it's a very fair thing. It's not so much the player, it's where the player was picked and then what it means for him. And also, I think the fair question, somebody asked him in the chat, what does this mean for Milano stands like myself? I think it was Eugene. Like, I think that's a fair question because if people immediately saw linebacker and it was like, whoa. Does that mean Tremaine Edmonds isn't going to be resigned? Wait a minute.
Right.
He plays Will. He's more of a Milano guy. Does that mean somebody said to me on Twitter, I believe, that he thought this means Edmonds is going to get re-signed and Milano is going to be the odd man out next year? And I was like,
maybe.
Whoa. And I don't necessarily agree, but that's where the fan base's head is at, because you take a player that plays this position, one of your starters is a free agent next year. And so it's immediately like, wait a minute. Are they taking this guy to be a starter? Who's he going to be a starter for? Because he's not an ideal fit for the guy that's going to be a free agent. So what does it mean? And I think that's where the biggest question comes from, right? Like, what does it mean for his role and the position grouping on this team?
I want to circle back to the opportunity cost and the Dylan Parham pass up, I guess. In the press conference, Bean specifically talked about Cody Ford, and he talked about how Aaron Kromer is excited to get his hands on Cody Ford, how they, quote, truly believe he's part of the plan this year, and that this is Cody Ford's first offseason without a surgery, and how much that could help him this year. Bean mentioned, like, to be fair to Cody, like, this is the first year that he's not going to get surgery in the offseason, but he does have things that he needs to work on that are within his control. And I think that's now where Aaron Kromer steps in, helping him control the controllables and get better in those ways. I think that's a big portion to this that I think a lot of people are missing out on. Of course, the fan base has soured on Cody Ford, and they're not going to assume or hope that Cody Ford is going to be an instant contributor this year or even next year. I mean, there's no reason, given our perceptual set, to think so. That being said, inside the building, they know things differently. They know him on a human level, not just the, guy with Ford on the back of his jersey and, with the Bills helmet on. So I think that changes things in a lot of ways. If the Bills truly see Ford as part of their plans this year and perhaps beyond, then it makes me feel a little bit better about passing up on Parham. But of course, we got to see what Aaron Kromer can turn Cody Ford into. And the interesting thing too about that, I mean, this is kind of playing devil's advocate on everything I just said about it. You have to re-sign Cody Ford if you're going to get Cody Ford back here next year, and that's not cost controlled. And what you would have had with Dylan Parham is cost controlled. So that's what's really interesting. Like, of course, you can just go the route on, you try it with Cody Ford, and if it doesn't work out, then you get Kromer cost control next year, or even you get cost control later in the draft tonight. It's just not as much of a priority because Kromer or Bean or the whole organization, as a whole, wants to see what they can mold Ford into with this new opportunity with Aaron Kromer in-house. So, yeah, I think that needs mentioning when we talk about the opportunity cost and what you passed up on when you drafted Terrel Bernard. But I am truly warming up to it with all of the contextual clues that Bean gave us last night in the press conference.
And I think that was a big piece. Like we said it live on the show. I also like this. I want to read this comment here from Autumn real quick, who's a tremendous supporter of ours, and we appreciate so much. But the comment is great. Autumn says, I feel like people are quick to assume that rookies are going to immediately replace our starters. Some rookies just stay depth for most of their time here, and that's still a valuable asset.
Yeah.
That's a really good part. And even if somebody said something to me on Twitter this morning as well, like, even if he's just a core special teamer and he's great at it, that maybe is it too early? Yeah, but that's still a good pick. And I was like, technically you're not wrong there. Like, I understand that. I think what being said put it a lot into context, because I think a lot of our consternation last night came from the questions we were asking of like, what does this mean? What is his role? Because you look at the pick and you look at the needs on this roster and combine with the skill set and traits and all that, it's like, okay, where does he fit and how? And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, after hearing what Bean said and kind of connecting the dots and putting it together with what we've seen from the tape combined with the metrics, things start to add up a little bit more, but it's going to continue to come back to that opportunity cost. I'm just still gun shy from last year when the Bills took Basham and then the Chiefs got Creed Humphrey. And I'm sitting here being like, not again.
Right.
Like,
Right.
oh, I don't want to be in that boat again. But the boat that we're in now is Mr. Terrel Bernard. We'll start with the strengths and the positives, like we did with Mr. Dalvin Cook, and also like we did, shameless plug here, like we did with Bill's first round pick, Kyer Elam, when we broke down that and debuted that episode yesterday morning. So if you want a deep dive, in-depth breakdown of Mr. Kyer Elam, feel free to check that out. That link for that episode is in this episode show notes, maybe.
A lot of confidence spewing from you right now.
I don't remember. But also definitely on cover one, you'll see it immediately. Another episode of Disguise coverage there. Check that out. But Mr. Terrel Bernard. Also, we're crushing it with live viewers right now on the Saturday morning. If you guys could be so kind as to drop a like, help us to track and trend in front of more eyes and ears and allow us to continue to grow and progress and have better opportunities to give you guys more information and knowledge and everything, that would warm my heart and Kendall's as well, please. And thank you. Mr. Terrel Bernard, someone who you've come around a little bit more since hearing Bean speak. Positives, which honestly makes sense, are a lot of the things that Brandon Bean talked about. What do you got for Mr. Terrel Bernard from a good standpoint?
Yeah, definitely the process thing. The first and foremost, the process and the culture fit. That's obviously a big thing for them. They talked about that with Kyer Elam, and I think that's now it needs to be noted with Terrel Bernard. He seems like someone who is dedicated to his craft, dedicated to getting better, and plays with that chip on his shoulder, knowing he's undersized,
Everything
knowing
was
he's
all
not.
process. He's smart.
Yeah.
He's instinctual. He's a good guy. He's a leader. It was like, oh God, process, got it.
But especially seeing that versatility and the fact that he can play Mike and Will despite being undersized,
which
that's
is also
a chip
part
on
of the
shoulder that
process
they always look for. Yeah,
yes,
versatility.
and exactly.
Yeah, so I think that's very, very key to this pick. I think moving forward, I think, there's literally sun hitting my eye right now.
Dude, I saw it.
I
It
see
looks
that.
like, it looks like I want music and be like, oh, it's like you're shining right now, dude.
The other thing with Bernard though is I say this a lot with interior offensive linemen, I guess because I've been evaluating interior offensive linemen a lot this year, and of course we passed one. But either way, Bernard has athleticism to lose. I know the long speed is a little bit suspect on tape. He ran a sub 4.6 40, which is obviously great for a linebacker.
4.59, correct?
Yeah, but he has athleticism to lose and weight to gain. So I do truly wonder, if you get 5, 10 extra pounds on him, how much less athletic does he get? Because he plays a very athletic brand of football. It's not like, like you said, he's very agile. He's very quick in the box. He makes his reads quickly and then he acts on it and fires on it quickly. And of course, I mean, it needs to be stated his blitz ability. I'll get into the metrics of his pass rush productivity, but his blitz productivity is really
There's a
next
little
level.
N'Kobe Dean missile and hammer to him when he comes forward and blitz it.
For sure. So it'll definitely be interesting to see if, when the Bills got AJ Klein on the field, they had him doing that stuff. They had him blitzing.
Yes. And it was valuable. He had like 75 sacks.
I mean, you think back to that game, against Seattle last year when he had to come in. And of course, he made a real impact on that game. I believe 2 forced fumbles against Russell Wilson. So we'll see if they try to do that similar thing. If that third linebacker on the field for the Buffalo Bills is a blitz fiend, if he's someone that's truly in there to blitz and get after the quarterback, while the other 2 guys are, meant to just kind of slow play it and do their job in that way and see how the front, I guess 5 in this regard, the front 5 does stuff. And then those 2 guys on the second level read and react based off that. So I like the skill set. I like the process. I like the culture fit. I like that he's going to be a demon on special teams, like right off the bat. You can see it. He just has a will to win, a will to get on the field, a will to make this roster, all of that stuff. Like he's just processed through and through. But there is some upside in terms of what he could grow into. Like I'm not fully writing this off as a Tremaine Edmonds replacement. but it's still like there's still a portion of me that's thinking, if he adds some weight,
Mm.
are they okay with it? In 2023, if he adds 10, 15 pounds, is it a little bit more okay? It's a stretch. I know.
He's
I'm
gotta
I'm
show
not
so much more pattern
oh,
matching ability for me in
yes.
order to, like, I just don't see him
He's
ever as
not
that
there right
guy.
now.
No, but I don't know if he can be from a, because he's agile and he's quicker than he
Mhm.
is fast. I just, with what they ask Edmonds to do, and maybe they change the defense a little
And
bit,
that's
I
what
just
I'm
don't,
thinking. I'm like,
like,
do
he's
they
not
change
carrying,
things?
yeah, that's the thing, like, he's not carrying McCole Hardman on a
No.
25-yard post like Tremaine Edmonds is, and that's a needed thing right now, so they'd have to do some tweaks,
Yeah, so I'm not fully writing that off yet, but I'm like
which is
I'm
fair.
pretty much there. Like, let's be honest. I think if you're talking about him being one of the two linebackers in this 4-2-5 system, the obvious one that he would be replacing is Milano. But to your point, like we talked about, like, does that even make sense? We just
Milano's
locked in
great.
Milano by doing restructuring stuff this offseason.
He
There's
ain't
a
going
lot
anywhere.
more guarantees. You'd probably have to find a trade partner rather than releasing. And I don't think the Bills would release him because obviously he holds a lot of value. So,
He's tremendous as a player, but also in this scheme, in this fit, even though people like
yeah.
to knock him and say because he can't completely one up and lock down Travis Kelce, that means he's useless.
Oh man, no one can do that. But anyways, I do like Terrell Bernard. I like the fit in terms of the player, the person underneath the helmet.
Hmm.
I like to see I like the ideas of how you're gonna mix him in as a third linebacker and
Hmm.
4-3. I think it's intriguing, but I truly need to see how the rest of the draft is going to play out to
Same.
love this pick. And that's the main thing. I like the player, but I don't love the pick until the draft is complete and I know what we get in these late round picks.
I think it's a very fair way to look at it and a very level-headed approach. I'm gonna actually, before I go into that, I want to bring up this comment from Coach Chapman, who's always got really insightful things to say. This one
Yes.
was solid. Coach Chapman says Milano has been injured every year, and when he goes out, I do want to say I don't think the Milano injury narrative is a complete thing. He's gotten more big injuries that have been like random than I think he is injury prone. But nonetheless,
Mhm.
um, Coach Chapman says when Milano goes out, our D is not the same. If Bernard can give us a third linebacker and a player that can play, if Milano or Edmonds get hurt, then there is real value. That's a very fair assessment. If he's somebody who
Yes.
provides depth to the point that it mitigates the loss of a Milano or Edmonds due to injury, that's a huge thing. I mean, it's the same thing last year with the backup quarterback piece where people thought Mitchell
Yes.
Trubisky was such a great signing because it was like, well, no, he's not going to play. But God forbid if something happens to Josh, this guy isn't going to drive the bus off the freeway. Like he can take the wheel for a little bit and he can't drive as fast and he can't weave in and out of traffic as well, but he can still drive the bus to a decent degree and get you to your
Mhm.
destination. And I think that's a very fair point. Like that becomes a value spot. Again, we're very top heavy at linebacker, much in the similar way that the Bills are top heavy at safety. Like I
Mhm.
love Jaquan Johnson. He's my boy. And I like the Hamlin as well, but knock on wood, if Hyde or Poyer go down, that's a steep drop off to what you
Yes.
get in terms of a replacement at safety with what's currently on the roster. And it's a very similar thing with linebacker. Klein did well when he had to come in for spot duty, but he had his limitations. And
Mhm.
Milano and Edmonds are such a complete package of versatility. Yes, they each have their areas of opportunity that they have to work on, but with all the plus attributes and skill set pieces they have, it's tough to find a lot of those in one player, let alone in two. Like Edmonds is a unicorn in his own right. And honestly, Milano is a bit as well. Like if
Mhm.
everybody dives into his coverage stats and advanced metrics, he's such a quality cover linebacker. He's legitimately like one of the best in football in zone and man. His pattern matching ability and recognition and processing. There's a lot to like there. But again, because so much is placed on their shoulders, what happens if one of them goes down? And I think that's where I'm at with Bernard in terms of seeing him as a player and seeing the fit. It all comes down to that opportunity cost. And
Mhm.
when talking about his strengths, I like that you mentioned the blitzing piece. The very first clip as we were talking about offline against Oklahoma, he blitzes and doesn't make the play, but he blows up the pulling guard. Like he just hits him like a rocket. It's nuts. And I do think he has to work on some of his like pass rush technique. I think sometimes he gets caught up too much just doing like, well, I'm just going to blitz and hit someone. But
Yeah.
honestly, it works out a decent amount of the time. Like he gets into the backfield. This past year, he had 7 sacks 36 pressures and 7 sacks for him in 2021, which is a real nice stat to see. He's a missile coming forward. I like that piece in his game. My favorite thing for him, I mentioned it to you, his agility in the hole and his agility in run fits. He's not a guy who is going to make contact and stack and shed. That's not him. He's not making contact and standing and then boom and then making a play.
Yeah.
He gets in the hole and he uses his agility to avoid offensive linemen, fullbacks, tight ends. And it works like to a pretty high success rate. Like he's juking in the hole, like as if he's a running back, and he'll bend underneath some hands or dip or sidestep a block and then make a play. And his agility in the hole is something I really like. You see that short area burst and that speed in the box, but you also see that athleticism, which translates in the short areas. And I like that with him a lot. I do like that he has some pattern matching ability. I saw that several times on film. It's not necessarily covering guys deep, but it's more picking up guys in the short to low intermediate, mainly tight ends. But he's got that processing ability, his ability to recognize what's coming in front of him and then recognize that route, read it, and mirror it and run the route for the tight end or inside receiver. So that's a very positive thing. And that gave me a little confidence to be like, okay, maybe we build on this and go from there. So I like that a lot, the pattern matching ability. And again, the athleticism, it just tracks. And the frame is very interesting. Does he put on more muscle? Does he stay at where he's at? And what does he look like if he sees steps on the field? I said it last night, and I'm going to say it again. Where we are right now, going into the preseason, granted, there's going to be like more picks. I am tremendously anxious to see, and anxious in a good way, to see what Terrel Bernard looks like in the preseason. I want to see how he functions, what he does in this defense, what his role is. Because part of the reason we talked about Nakobe Dean not being a fit was because, well, the Bills aren't going to blitz him like that. Right. Bernard's a really good blitzer, and a guy coming forward is like, are they going to blitz him more? Are we going to see more simulated pressures or zone blitzes coming from this defense? Is this part of a philosophical trend or change? And what does his potential look like for the future? So there are some things to like with Bernard. And obviously there are some areas of opportunity with his game as well. When you look at Bernard, what are some things that give you pause? And again, obviously we're sitting there talking about the opportunity cost piece. And part of that is because he's going to have areas of opportunity to work on. So what are those for you that, you noticed on the film and diving into his game that you were like, this could be better and he needs to improve?
I mean, the main thing is his take on ability, how stout he is against those blockers. And I mean, that kind of goes into his strength. And you said his agility in the hole and the way he keeps his body clean in the hole. And that's why he's mitigating that weakness, and his strength is that agility to keep his body clean in that way. His weakness on the other side of things is to take on those blockers. If those blockers get to him, he struggles to shed them to make the play. He can do it. He shows plenty of energy and willingness to do it. He's always trying to make a play. I love his motor. But if he truly gets wrapped up by that offensive lineman, if they get to that second level and they get hands on him, he's not the stoutest. He will get pushed back a little bit and he struggles to shed off of them. I think that's my main one with him. Obviously, I have more film work to do. I'm only a game and a half in with him, but that's the main thing, man. Like in the run game, actually, I should go further.
Do it.
Because he is so much of a rocket and a missile in the run game and really everything, he misses some tackles.
That's one of my points. He has to finish at the tackle point. He doesn't always bring his feet. And that's one of the main reasons he doesn't finish at the tackle point. To put it in broad terms, yes, he needs better finishing at the tackle point.
It's Matt Milano-esque, where it's just you're a missile. You're firing forward and you're just so energetic.
He doesn't finish like Milano all the time, yeah.
No. But there are times where you see it and you're like, oh, okay, I see the flashes. But yeah, his missed tackle percentage has not been great through his entire career. And, even this past year, it got better. And he showed improvement at times, but it was shaky. And I think that's one of the main things.
15.9%, right? 17 missed tackles in 2021.
14.8 for career and 15.9 this past year. And that's tied for 89th amongst this draft year eligible 2022 linebackers with 50% of qualifying snaps, 89th. So it needs work. But the thing is, like, he's instinctive in the run game. And like you said, he keeps himself clean more than he doesn't because of that agility in the hole. But those are things that he needs to improve on. Those are, simply put, those are the things that he needs to improve on. And the fact that he's got a good head on his shoulder bodes well for that. And actually, Pops Mafia comes in and says the shoulder injury too, and that should be noted. I mean, he is someone that has some injury concerns in his past, but he seems like someone who's committed to. I mean, he said he wanted to be a bodybuilder and stuff like that. So he's
Anyway.
someone who's committed to, clean bill of health and all that stuff, keeping his body in tip top shape. So
Mm.
I would say the I guess the injury is the least of my worries. The injury risk is a lot of those is injuries are fickle. You can't really.
Yeah, it's tough.
But the take on the stoutness and then missed tackles. Those are the main three things.
Missed tackle was a big one for me. He, especially with how like his ability to penetrate at times, and I would get ready to be like writing it down in my notes as like a highlight I need to clip, and then he'd miss the tackle, and I'd be like, oh, never mind. And it
Mhm.
happens in a variety of fashions, but again, I think that's something he needs to bring his feet more. I think that's the cause of it. Like he gets there and he stops his feet and he lunges more with his upper body, and both of
Yeah.
those things are a no-no for when you're trying to make a tackle. Especially as you're going to face higher caliber of athletes with more twitch, more burst, more power. You have to bring your feet, and you can't lunge as he does at times and miss at the tackle point. But again, that's an area to talk about. And I do want to know how he progresses in the pattern matching piece. That is
Yes.
one for
Yeah.
me. I've seen it a bit. Thank you for answering my question in the chat. My brain is mush. I literally was like, wait a minute. And then I was like, okay, good. Yeah, the pattern matching piece I do want to see, because I don't think and I'm hoping his intelligence can make up for it, because not having the long speed, I think, is an area of opportunity that he can't fix. Like he's not suddenly
Right.
going to become like a 4.52 or a 4.49. So how does he translate versus those deeper or those higher intermediate or deep pattern matching responsibilities that he might have to fill? Or again, if he's functioning more around the line, like that's where we're going to see him more in that role, and maybe he doesn't have to carry guys vertically, and maybe he's not going to be in that world. And then just, yeah, for me, the overall, his intelligence is going to be there. I am concerned with some of the technical pieces, the tackling piece, the injury history that we've seen. I'm glad somebody mentioned the shoulder. And again, my biggest area of opportunity is I just don't know his overall game. I think there's a lot to like. I think he does a bunch of things that are average plus. I don't know if he has anything holistically in his game that makes him like bona fide starter. This guy's a stud and can fill into this role that is tremendously important and takes a lot of responsibility in order to fill. I do like that he, again, as I've said, he's a guy that's going to do his 111th mentally, physically. He
Mhm.
knows his role. He knows his responsibility. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I guess in the third round pick, you're talking upside for different players and things, but I just don't know if he's ever going to be that guy that's a plus matchup for your
Right.
defense in a consistent way. I think he can be a role player, and I think he can do his job. My biggest thing is going to see, okay, can he function in a world where it allows him to be a plus matchup? And I do want him to clean up that tackle piece, because that's a huge one. And I think overall, one thing I wanted to get to again as we start to wrap up here on Terrel Bernard. Some people asked, and we talked about even last night with his frame and size, is he reverse Milano, who's going to go from linebacker to safety, and maybe they just don't want to say
Oh
it right
yeah.
now?
Yeah.
Like
Right.
because his frame screams safety, but I think when you look at the tape, the
He's
way
not.
he plays in his skill set, I do not see him functioning as a safety. He's not going to live in a too high world. He's not going to be functioning in a
Oh, that's worse.
Hyde or Poyer capacity as you try to dim the sun from destroying you. Yeah, I don't see him functioning in that multiple versatile safety world, that especially with what the Bills do and how they disguise coverage, no pun intended, coming down from depth, living in too high, performing in a variety of shells pre and post snap, and then executing in those post snap coverages. I don't see him transitioning into safety. I think for me, he'd probably have to lose a little more weight.
Right.
And even then, I don't think his skill set and how I don't think he has the hips to function as a safety. I will
Mm,
say that, and let
that's
alone
fair.
the long speed and having to press vertical. But what are your thoughts? Because I know a lot of people have asked in the chat.
No, I totally would echo that. I think at the time we were trying to rationalize the pick at
Yes, we were.
in the live stream, and we were just trying to wrap our heads around it. We were like, how's he going to get on the field? Even if he was a safety, how's he going to get on the field? All that stuff. So yeah, I think we should put that to bed. I think it would be a stretch. I think big nickel is probably maybe the fairest thing to say, like, how is he going to get on the field? Because essentially that's what he is. He's a bigger Teron Johnson in a way, he's just a lighter 4-3 look than most teams are used to in 4-3, but that's, the modern NFL. I just wanted to go into some of the metrics on him.
Yes.
He had in his career 82 total. These are going to be mostly like run stopping stuff and then blitz productivity. In his career, he had 302 pass rush snaps, 82 total pressures on those, 46 hurries, 21 hits, 15 sacks. He had 3 interceptions and 5 pass
Also,
breakups.
real quick, let's clarify, because I know some people asked in the chat. When he gets these sacks, it's coming from blitzing from an off-ball position, sometimes coming off the edge, but he's not winning with pass rush moves and technique. He's more of a blitzing hammer, attacking a gap and a crease and getting through it. He's not winning in a pass rush scenario a la like a Micah Parsons, like was asked in the chat. Like, I just wanted to clarify that for people.
Yeah, he's just blowing up the hole. He sees a run gap, he sees a pass rushing gap, whatever it is, he just blows it up and gets to the quarterback quickly because he blows up the running back. He's just very quick through the hole and he's a hammer in that way. Nice. There's not much
I wanted us to clarify that for people, because I think people see the sacks or hear about the sacks and it's like, oh, well, he can do it. It's like, no. It's not that. It's not that. It's something different.
So this is perfect. So in 2021, he had 36 total pressures, like you mentioned earlier. That's tied for 5th amongst qualifying linebackers in this
which is really
class,
nice.
Which is really
especially
nice.
when you're not operating with pass rush technique and plan. Like, you're just getting there off of physicality and burst. Oof.
Top 10 in hurries, hits, and sacks. I believe he was top 5 in hurries and hits, but then he was top 10 in sacks. His pass rush productivity, his PRP, according to PFF, which factors in your opportunity and your productivity, 17.2. That is first amongst qualifying linebackers in this draft class. That is ahead of Leo Chenal. That is ahead of Nakobe Dean. That is ahead of Devin Lloyd. Now, should be noted, like you said, Devin Lloyd has a plan. When he rushes the passer, there's a clear plan. There's clear technical upside there. So you are leaving that on the table. But from a productivity standpoint, this dude knows how to get after the ball and get that quarterback. And I think that is valuable, especially from an off-ball look. But then going on to his run defense stuff, he had 45 tackles. This is in 2021. 45 tackles, tied for 52nd amongst qualifying linebackers. 11 missed tackles, not great. 14.3 missed tackle percentage, obviously not great, tied for 84th. 34 run stops. This is where it gets good. 34 run stops, tied for 22nd. A run stop percentage of 11.6, tied for 8th amongst qualifying linebackers, and an average depth of tackle of 2.5, tied for 15th. So this dude is active. And I think that's the main thing. He plays with a lot of energy. He likes to get to the ball quickly and wreak havoc in that way. I think the run defense stats speak to that. And it also speaks to why he misses some tackles, because he kind of plays like a missile, just a human missile. So, like you said, areas for opportunity, but there is definitely potential with this pick. I like the player. I really want to see what happens on day 3, though.
What would happen on day 3 that would make you feel better about the, we'll transition to, some day 3 talk in general, as we're about 47 minutes away from it. But what would make you feel better on day 3? What happening on day 3 would make you feel better about the Bernard pick, as I stumble over my words there?
A combination of wide receiver, tight end, and interior offensive lineman. If it's 2 of those 3, if it's all of those 3, I mean, God bless. But if it's 2 of those 3, I'm content, man. Like, if there's a safety mixed in there to make it 2 of 3, if it's, like a defensive lineman, like Jim says, to make it 2 out of 3.
Calvin Austin.
If it's Calvin Austin, I'm ecstatic. Like, that's what I mean. That's what it's going to take. I want to see a wide receiver, a tight end, interior offensive lineman. I want to see these needs starting to get addressed in that way. Ravens are killing the draft. I want to see those needs get addressed, and it would make me feel a lot better. Even if these are if those needs are being addressed with players I don't necessarily love, whatever, man, the team is identifying those needs and they are addressing them, and they followed their board. And I can't argue with that. People obviously bring up the argument, better than Brandon Beane. Oh, you can't like this pick, but I question the pick. I question the pick because obviously Dylan Parham was there, and yeah, exactly. We need an interior offensive lineman. But hey, if Brandon Beane followed his board and Bernard was above Parham, and then he gets an interior offensive lineman later in the draft, then I'm back on board, man. Like, then yeah, I question why he had Bernard over Parham, but ultimately I don't question his process because he ended up getting that fit and he got that need at both positions. So, and yeah, people, of course, going into this draft said linebacker was a need. I
And it
just
was. We
think,
had the
I don't
depth
think
there.
there were a ton of people that were saying, oh, we need one in the first 3 rounds. We need one now. We need, so that was where the shock value came for me.
That's very fair. I'm in a very similar boat. Like I have concerns about the wide receiver grouping in 2023 and beyond. Actually, and honestly, even a little in this year. Like I think the fit of Jamison Crowder works, but I think Cole Beasley is a big loss. And then you're trying to patch his loss together with Crowder and McKenzie. What does McKenzie's role look like? And then again, Crowder's on a 1-year deal. Yes, I like Kyle Phillips very much, especially if they can get him in the 5th. I'd take that all day.
That'd be awesome.
What does Crowder look like? What does Gabriel Davis's future look like? Are the Bills going to be able to afford him when he's up for free agency? He's a good player. He's only going to continue to improve, whether it's by a lot or a little. And we know how much wide receivers get paid on the open market, i.e. Christian Kirk and Zay Jones. Ironically, that they both went to the same team. But dudes get paid on the open market, especially if they're a wide receiver. That's a high priority position for teams, and they get paid like it. So wide receiver, yeah, if the Bills somehow came away with a receiver, if they somehow came away with Calvin Austin, I'm fine. I got no qualms. But then if they were able to, even like the Kyle Phillipses of the world or Khalil Shakir, the tight end pieces, if they come away with Charlie Kohler, if they come away with a Cole Turner, even Otten, who I didn't love, there are some things to like in his game, so I can understand. Like those are a lot of the guys that the Bills brought in for top 30 visits. Isaiah Likely, like these type of guys that match that. And then again, interior offensive line. Like my biggest needs for this team coming into this draft were corner, running back, not in order. Well, corner's number 1, but corner, receiver, running back, and interior offensive line. That is what I wanted addressed in the first 4 rounds. Obviously, there is no 4th round pick now, so that changes a little bit. But if they can still address those with quality on this back end of day 3, whether they trade up, whether they stay pat, whatever, I agree to your point. Like it starts to change, the thought and feeling a little bit. And I want to pull up this real quick comment from Joel who says, Cole was replaced by Crowder. Yes, from a depth chart perspective, I think Cole Beasley is better than Jamison Crowder. Crowder offers you a bit more run after catch, which is nice, and maybe a little more long speed. But I still think Beasley is. I hope Crowder can mitigate it, but I think Cole Beasley was really underappreciated towards the back end of this year. And there's a lot of narratives that were passed around about him, about his on-field play, which I don't subscribe to. But I think I hope Crowder can fill that role, but I think the shoes are big to fill. Cole Beasley is still one of the best slot receivers in football and a very, 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 very dangerous weapon. And Joel, I saw another comment here saying Calvin Austin's going to have a big chip on his shoulder. He probably will. He's not going until round 4. Like maybe people think that, or maybe he thought he was going to go earlier and he was reading into all the buzz. Maybe his agent thought the same thing too. So yeah, you get a guy who's already going to have his chip on his shoulder because he's smaller. He's fast. He's a good route runner. He's got burst. He's got speed. He's got hands. He's athletic. He competes. And now he's probably going to have all that and more, along with a bigger chip on his shoulder and anger for how much he's fallen a little bit there, which is very, very interesting. Kendall, closing thoughts, whether it's Bernard, whether it's Cooks, whether it's Bernard, whether it's Cook, whether it's something on day 3, whether it's Elam again, anything and everything. What are your closing thoughts here as we wrap up this episode?
I mean, I'm just happy the Bills are getting good human beings first, because that seems to be the overarching
Culture is
theme
important
since Bean came to town, and I'm really thrilled with that. At the end of the day, sure, do I like the tape on other players more than the players they picked? Maybe, but like, if this is the guy, I don't have the piece of the puzzle to the character side of things. I don't get to meet these players, I just see the tape. And if Bean and staff and company tells me that this guy is a process player and he is committed to his craft and he's committing to getting better every single day, I don't have a process and I don't have a problem, and I can start like processing this pick and really contextualizing it and getting behind it a lot more than just, oh, his tape wasn't as good as this guy's tape, because you know what, that guy's tape that I think is better, he might think he's already the best player in the locker room the minute he gets in there. So I think there's obviously the value to the culture component. You have to be able to play for your brothers in that locker room, and he's getting guys that are going to fit into that locker room and the culture that he has cultivated. So that is my overarching theme with the first 3 picks that the Buffalo Bills have made. I think they all fit the culture and what the Buffalo Bills are trying to do in this locker room. And I am excited to see what they add to the locker room here on day 3.
That's a really great point. The culture piece is so huge. At this point, we talked about it in reference to Elam, and maybe that's part of what pushed him into the first round grading pool for the Buffalo Bills. The character piece is huge for this team. Players get written off the board because of character concerns or lack of culture fit. People get added to the board and pushed up the board because of strong character and good culture fit. And I think that's a very valid piece. We need to start considering culture as part of skill set or trait, like one of those 2 things. Like, it needs
I
to
wish
start
we
being
could scout
included.
it. I really do. I wish
had a
we
thing.
could.
It's so hard. Like, and especially if you're just watching tape, like, you're really just trying to surmise and, Ned, I see your super chat and I'm going to grab it in a sec.
We'll get there.
You're just trying to surmise and add things up from a variety of puzzle pieces, trying to put things together. But at the end of the day, it's still based on a lot of assumption. But the culture and the character piece is huge. I don't think we can discount that. You can do a lot worse than adding either a good football player or a good human being to your team, and a good person and a hard worker with good work ethic and focus. I've always said it as as a person who's been on a lot of teams and had manager positions and things like that. Like, I will take a guy with a good attitude and a strong work ethic any day even over guys who are more talented. Like, give me somebody with a good work ethic and a good head on their shoulders and a good attitude. You can do so much with them. You can teach them anything. You can add anything to them. Granted, here in football, there are physical limitations to that, but you can squeeze a lot of blood from a stone from a guy with a good attitude and a strong work ethic. And I think that's a huge piece to consider. Ned, you are fantastic. You are a constant supporter of ours, both in terms of presence and monetary value. So thank you so much for your super chat. And good question here. Ned says, before we go, do you see the Bills getting into the 4th round somehow? We talked about this a little earlier, but Kendall, let's dive into it. For me, I think initially it's going to come off of I think they'd have to package the 5th and one of their 6ths, maybe even multiple. And then I think you have to get back into the back end of the 4th. Nobody's going to trade a top half pick in the 4th for like 1/5 and 1/6, or maybe even 1 and 2 sticks. I feel like you have to come with a lot of capital and sacrifice a lot of picks to move up into the top half of the 4th. Or if you get to the back end of the 4th, then it's going to cost the 5th and a 6th, maybe 2. And I can live with that value. We also know from what Brandon Beane said yesterday, he mentioned multiple times in the presser, I hoped we could get a 4th. I wish we had our 4th. I didn't want to give up the 4th. I'm trying to get a 4th. Literally all of those phrases he said multiple times. So we know it's a possibility. I do think it's a possibility. It's just going to be a matter of how much draft capital they sacrifice. So Kendall, what are your thoughts? Do you see the Bills getting into the 4th round somehow?
I just pulled up the Jimmy Johnson draft.
I figured you were when I saw you look into your computer. So I was like, I'm just going to keep talking and let him pull it up. Bang.
Now, I wanted to make sure that the math added up, but I think you're right that like the top end of the 4th or the top half of the 4th round, it's attainable, but like what team mathematically it's attainable, but what team is going to be like, yeah, that 5th and 2/6 is really cute for us.
I wouldn't
to go
do
and
that if I was that
trade
team.
our top end of the 4th round. It doesn't make a lot of sense for them. I think you would have to package a future pick in there too to kind of entice them and, sprinkle some spice onto that to make them actually want to do that. But I think it's very attainable for them, mathematically speaking, to get into the 4th round with all of the 6th round picks they have, and of course still having a 5th and a 7th. So it's possible. I wouldn't say it's probable to expect one in the top half of the 4th round, but I think it's I don't want to say probable, but it's possible to get into the 4th round. It is.
I agree. It's just going to be a matter of finding a dance partner and what you have to sacrifice to get it. This one was fantastic. James, thank you so much for, 1, being here live, 2, your super chat donation, and the comment. He says, speaking of character, good job, guys. That sincerely means a lot. Like, thank you so much, James.
Thank you, James.
And to put the money behind it as well, like that adds, like, that's super cool. Thank you very much for that. This has been a very, we talked about it. We were like pushing 300 viewers consistently live on this stream. We're still rocking over 260 now as we start to wind down here. I think that's pretty good for a kind of last minute communication of a show. I just put the tweet out this morning. I think people knew that we were going to do something, but when we were doing it, the specifics of it kind of got hammered out this morning.
Yeah.
And a 10 a.m. Saturday morning show, like just the viewers that we pushed through and everything that happened. The engagement in this episode was great. I cannot thank everybody who tuned in live more than we have. I really appreciate you guys for being here and riding with us this morning, and super chats, the comments, the engagement, just the presence overall here was tremendous this morning. We appreciate you guys so much. Thank you so much for being here. Kendall, final closing thoughts. We started to have some questions come through, and I just wanted to kick it to you one more time. Anything that is on your brain, anything that is your focus today specifically? Do you want to give, like, and I'm just literally throwing things out there. Do you have someone that is your dream scenario today? Like, oh, that's a fun one. What is your dream? Do you have a dream other than, okay, like interior O-line, tight end, wide receiver? Here's one. If you could get a 4th round pick right now and move up into the 4th, who are you doing it for? What player?
Easy answer is Calvin Austin, but like, okay. I don't know if he's actually going to be there. The other one is Romeo Doubs. I really, really like Romeo Doubs. I think he offers inside, outside versatility. He has home run speed to take the top off of defense and threaten that deep ball. Obviously, coupling a deep ball option with Josh Allen is very enticing to me. And he's got rack ability because of that speed. He shows some wiggle when he gets the ball in his hands. So I really like Romeo Doubs. I think he's being slept on a little bit, but there's a lot Calvin Austin, Khalil Shakir, Kyle Phillips, Romeo Doubs. I'd be okay with any of those wide receivers, but the obvious, trade up, try to get in the early portion of that 4th round. Because I really do believe Calvin Austin is going to be one of the first 15 guys taken once, day 3 actually kicks off. Calvin Austin, man, I really want to get Calvin Austin, but it seems like a pipe dream.
I agree. I think it is that as well. And I'll stick with the receiver just to build off it. Austin, Shakir, Kyle Phillips. I am hoping the Bills come away with one of them. I think all 3 honestly are like kind of, even though you're getting them on day 3, which is, I think people would think it's a stretch. I think all 3 of them have pretty realistic plug and play ability. Just being able to go in and see like, oh wow, this person could function in the slot and live in that world right away. Very interesting. I think that would kind of like take people by surprise, but I love their potential, all of them in the Bills offense, varying degrees. Obviously, I would prefer Calvin Austin the most, but I like Shakir and I like Phillips. Also an interesting one for me. I'm going to continue to bang the drum for corner. Kobe Bryant is still there.
Yeah, he is.
And I don't love Kobe Bryant, but I think if he somehow fell to 5th, oh my God, but 4th round value, I'll take it. The guy won the Thorpe this past year, and he's got some traits and skill set pieces to like. So Kobe Bryant is one that I have my eye on as well. I think it's highly unlikely. I think he's going to go in the top half of the 4th, but very interesting. Again, as people were saying, Gabriel Davis was a day 3 pick. Yep. Matt Milano was a day 3 pick.
Still excitement. People don't poo-poo these picks on day 3. Like Bean has made something out of day 3 picks. McDermott and company has made something out of day 3 picks. Stay tuned for what we got going here at Cover 1 and what the Bills are going to do on day 3 here. So get excited, man. We still have picks to make.
A lot of picks to make, a lot of possibilities, and obviously the odds go down in terms of success rate when you move further down the draft, but there's quality dudes available, and there is somewhat of a history of guys on day 3, not just for the Bills, but especially as you widen the net for the entire NFL of making an impact. So make sure you tune in to day 3 and get yourself ready for that. Kendall and I will not be doing day 3 show participation today. We are going to recharge and potentially live life and recover a bit. But what you will get from Kendall and myself, as we've done here, and the support has been tremendous, tomorrow, Sunday, we will be back doing another in-depth breakdown of everything that the Bills have on day 3. It will be sometime, got to figure out some life stuff because going on a Sunday is a little tricky, but it'll be sometime either Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening, and we will be doing a live breakdown like we did for Kaiir Elam. Well, that was pre-recorded, but we'll be doing an in-depth breakdown like we did for Kaiir Elam and like we did this morning for both James Cook and Terrel Bernard. We'll be doing that Sunday, so please tune into that live tomorrow on Sunday. Maybe talk a little whole draft as well. We got a lot going on. I got to stop now because we got a super chat, a last-minute super chat. Thank you very much, Elvis. But Elvis says, do they go wide receiver now with the pick of Cook? I want to kind of flip this a little. One, thank you very much, Elvis, for the super chat. Thank you for being here. I kind of want to put this into the scope of Bean said, because somebody explicitly, a reporter specifically asked him last night, oh, hey, like, no wide receiver. And then he countered with not even asked about Cook. He was like, well, Cook has some of those wide receiver traits. So bang. Do we think that, and even I mentioned it offline, but I think I mentioned on episode 2, Bean specifically said that the run on wide receivers didn't impact anything for them yesterday. He said, quote, no, not really. We just kind of followed the board. Granted, maybe guys are ranked higher and James Cook was ranked higher than Calvin Austin, obviously. Or maybe if Sky Moore falls, he changes that math a little bit. But maybe receiver isn't an option now or high of a priority because they view Cook as kind of like a receiver complement capable piece.
I personally hope not. I hope they use I personally just hope they use Cook in a way where Richard comes in. He can be a wide receiver.
Correct.
Not that
I want an
is
actual
the
one.
slot wide receiver. Exactly. I want an actual wide receiver on top of that, because then you're getting double cost control. I guess you could talk about how, you're making one player fit into 2 roster spots, but I don't necessarily want to do that to James Cook. I want to make him a running back that can do wide receiver stuff, and then also get a wide receiver who obviously is holistically a wide receiver. But yeah, I hope it's not the case.
No, yeah, same. I want an actual wide receiver. I also want to pull up some comments because, again, everyone in the chat's amazing. Little fun facts for everyone. People in, Stephon Diggs was a 5th-round pick. Antonio Brown, who's gone crazy, was a day 3 pick. Terrell Davis, Hall of Famer, Broncos legend, the man who carried literally John Elway to a Super Bowl. Yeah, there's quality to be had on day 3. I also wanted to pull. Oh, thanks, Pops. Pop says we'll miss your draft coverage today, but you know what? You can find us. Let me pull down the banner real quick. Twitter handles. You got a question? You want instant access? Because we're still going to be watching the draft, but you want that access? Get at me at pro__ant, pro 2 underscores ANT. Get at Kendall at Mirsky Kendall right there. Give the follow on Twitter and add us with anything you need. Questions, thoughts, comments, concerns. We're very active. We'll get to anything and everything that we can, especially as we trickle everything throughout the day. But we will be giving analysis on the old Twitter machine. So follow us and stay tuned for that. Silas, who's a supporter as well, he throws in a late super chat and says he's super sick that we passed on Parham and Nick Cross. I am definitely saddened at the that was verbiage was about to be bad. That we passed on Dylan Parham. I liked him a lot. I would have been fine with him in the 2nd, let alone in the 3rd. I think the value would have been great, let alone the fit and the upside and what it means. He could have been a starter. He could have beaten out Bates and started in 2022, or realistically, he's starting in 2023. But I like that a lot. Nick Cross, I'm not too high on. I like his athleticism. I like his range and size and all the boxes he ticks there. But he misses a lot of tackles coming from depth, a lot. There's a bunch of Kenneth Walker highlights where he just puts in the spin cycle and gets made to be look very foolish. I also didn't see too much impact from him in games against higher level teams like Ohio State. Yes. He has one nice real rangy play against Ohio State where he breaks up a pass on the sideline, but there wasn't too much for that. I again, coming to Buffalo, be the best version of yourself. You got a tradesy, toolsy guy. Maybe the Bills coach him up and he turns out to be something. I wasn't a huge fan of Cross from the tape, although I do respect his physical measurables and what he brings. Right. Kendall, I know you're sick on the Bills not getting Parham with the opportunity there, but what are your thoughts overall there on Parham and Cross?
Nah, yeah, I'm upset about the Parham one. That one really hits home with me. I'm in a very similar boat with
his other comment.
Yeah, still Bo Melton dream alive. I'll get to that in a second. I'm just upset about the Parham one. I'm really hoping it doesn't turn into like J.K. Dobbins, when we took A.J. Epinesa, or Creed Humphrey when we took Boogie Basham.
Or we took A.J. Epinesa instead of Jeremy Chin.
Yeah, that was exactly. Like there was a lot of opportunity cost there. So I'm hoping it doesn't turn into that. I really am. But I still, we got to give Terrel Bernard his flowers. The Bo Melton thing, I'm legitimately curious if Bo Melton's still on the board after taking a guy like James Cook. I feel like they offer a lot of the same things. Obviously, Melton more of a wide receiver than running back, and then Cook more of a running back than wide receiver, but they both offer that kind of versatility where they can do both. So I legitimately wonder if Melton's still on the board anymore after taking James Cook. But yeah, I still like the player Bo Melton. I just wonder if it makes sense to get a redundant skill set like that in the same draft.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. I'm just seeing comments come through that are making me laugh. I appreciate you guys so much. This was tremendous. Again, yeah, the engagement, the donations, the support, the kind words, anything and everything. We appreciate you guys so much. Thank you to anyone and everyone who tuned in live for this episode of Disguise Coverage. Kendall and I appreciate the hell out of you for it. If you watched later or listening later, anyone on the podcasting apps and platforms, thank you so much for your view, your listen, your download, whatever have you. We appreciate you just as much. Thank you so much. Please rate and review and subscribe to Disguised Coverage. Please, 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 please drop a like while you're here in this moment, whether you're watching later or watching live right now. It really, especially early on, it tracks and trends a lot, functions with the algorithms, helps us get in front of more eyes and ears for us, which really helps us a lot for where we're trying to go in our lives and our careers. So please, and thank you for that. And thank you just for everything in general. We say it every week, and I feel like a broken record at this point, but we would be nothing without you guys. You guys are tremendously supportive and help us out in more ways than you know. So thank you very much for anyone and everyone's ounce of support in any way, shape, or form. Stay tuned for Kendall and myself tomorrow, breaking down everything that happens on day 3 for the Buffalo Bills. Then catch myself and Kendall and maybe Eric Turner this Tuesday in the Cover One film room as we break down game tape on. That's going to be like a 75-hour long film room. As we
I wonder how we're going to break it up.
We're probably going to have to break it up into 2 episodes because there's going to be a lot. Unless the Bills trade all their day 3 picks to move up to an early 4th round pick, and then we don't have to do that. But yeah, stay tuned for the Cover One film room. And then Disguise Coverage will be back next week. There's a lot for you guys to consume, and we know you will. And appreciate you guys so much. I hope you and your family and friends and loved ones all do well and take care of each other and stay safe. For Kendall Mirsky and myself, Anthony Prohaska, thank you very much for getting up with us this early Saturday morning. Thank you for the bottom of our hearts. We appreciate you guys so much. We will see you next week. And as always, go Bills.